You're very welcome to another episode of the Scaling Your Business podcast. For this episode, delighted to be joined by Conor Sheridan, the founder and CEO of Nori, also the co-founder of Mad Egg. Conor, you're welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rian. Great to be here.
Yeah, delighted to have you, man. Typical fashion of the show is we spend the first couple of minutes getting to know the guests, then we jump into other areas. No different with you. You grew up in Castleknock, if I've done my research correct. I'm basing that off where you went to secondary school. What was life like growing up in Castleknock? Any favorite standout memories, hobbies you like to enjoy?
Yeah, it was great. Great place to grow up. It was a lot smaller than it is now, I suppose. So it was kind of on a small road there. It was pretty tight knit. Everybody was kind of the same age growing up. It was the height of the Chicago Bulls fever. So everybody was running around basketballs on the side of the street with their basketball jerseys and whatnot. So, and it was cool, very cool. Still very close to a lot of people who grew up there with.
Very cool. Yeah, very, very close to Phoenix Park as well, which is a beautiful place to go for a walk.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, where I live out in Ratoath, and when my parents moved out here, there was no shops, so they had to go to Super Queen in Castleknock, which was the nearest shop. So, been many times. When you were younger, I'm curious to know, you've mentioned Chicago Bulls, but was being a professional sports player something you wanted to be, or did you have your sights set on something else? I guess the real question is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I wasn't in any kind of nick or height to be a professional sports player, so that wasn't going to happen. Big into sports, though. Obviously, played everything growing up, from basketball to rugby to football to cricket to anything, right? Anything to get my hands on. What did I want to be growing up? I don't know, really. I wanted to be a lot of different things as a kid. I wanted to be from a journalist to originally to be a lawyer to want to start my own businesses, to do different things. I used to be quite sporadic, or a little bit like ADHD, if you want to put it that way, in terms of what I want to do. Just chase things for a little bit, not do it, chase other things. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I wasn't too sure.
What had you choose economics? Because I know you did that in DCU, and then you went on to do a master's over in London as well.
Yeah. Just something that really kind of interested me and resonated with me when I was doing it in secondary school. I found it quite like explainable, right? It could explain if when you're working on the theory, or particularly the microeconomics that was quite quantitative, was just something I found easier. I had an interest in finance as well. So like, I think I grew up in Ireland in what was the Celtic Tiger, right? So for all the negatives, you would have seen all the kind of press clippings, or all the stories of people who worked in finance or corporate finance or stuff like that. So it was just something that I was like, look, this seems to be a good career path, because I think growing up it was like very much your parents, like it's the same now, with parents' job was get the degree, get into something solid. If it was accounting, if it was finance, if it was consulting, or whatever you could get into. And it was the most attractive of like the kind of things that were in my eye line, because I suppose when I was going into college, entrepreneurship wasn't even a conversation, right? It was do well, make sure you get into one of these lanes and you're set for life type situation. So it was the one that kind of was the most attractive for me to lean towards at an early age.
Gotcha. Talking about early age, a question I like to ask guests is around impact and influence. What I mean by that is, people can usually point to a small handful of people, close friends, family members, teachers, who had a massive impact on them in their early years. So think teenage Conor, or even younger than that helped them shape the person they've become today. Does anyone spring to mind for you?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely be my parents, right? I think my mom, on one side, been able to kind of maybe control my emotions, if you will. So she was like a psychologist. She was also like, she would have worked with some disadvantaged people and people who were born with learning difficulties. And I was a bit all over the place as a kid as well. So I get into a bit of trouble, or just a bit messy, and actually teaching you how to just stay balanced, which I think has been really beneficial for me now. Like when you're bouncing between startup issues or trying to scale a business and going through the pressures of it, to be able to kind of center yourself is super important, and it's not always easy. And I always look back at her for that, right, and have a lot of gratitude for that. And then my dad, for sure, he was an entrepreneur as well himself, so that's kind of the first kind of taste I would have got for that. So he went out in 80s Ireland to set up his own business when interest rates were huge, inflation was huge, and not a big background of it, made a good success of it in his own right, and was inspirational for me. So he's definitely been what I lean to, right? If I have an issue or if I have something that I haven't faced before and I want that kind of coach in the corner, he's definitely been the person that I would lean to. So both those people, for sure.
Sweet. I'd like to rewind the clock actually to the year 2014. You spent 8 months at Accenture, and then after that, you spent a little longer at Davy as a fund manager. You can pick either of those two roles, but in Accenture, for the audience, you were focused on building out large-scale strategy roadmaps. A fund manager at Davy. Was there anything during your time, again, pick either one of those, that while you're at either one of those, you felt you did well, that you got right, and you took a lesson from, you learned? Yeah, I guess if I was to rephrase that, it would be, if you were to pick one of those two companies you worked at, is there any lessons learned you took from them that you were like, you were glad you got them before you decided to go out by yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Positives would have been from the investment side, definitely around a better proficiency with numbers in terms of understanding like IRR, like your return on investments. So like, if it's going to be return on time or return on capital, like being able to structure an investment opportunity, being able to structure a business opportunity before you do it, super beneficial, because like a lot of the time you'll probably be similar yourself, some cracking ideas in here, right, or on paper, and then when you start to put it down tactically and see like, if I spend X number of years of my life doing this, what's the potential upside, or what could I do here? And it slowly falls away to not so interesting anymore, because probably the ROI isn't there. So definitely that. From the investment side, from the consulting side, yeah, I suppose it teaches you some good soft skills around dealing with people, right? Because you're constantly trying to deal with people in a difficult situation. If it's a big change, like if it's an M&A, or if it's a whole new strategy or a whole new roadmap, or a digital change, people are uncomfortable, they're on edge. So that kind of situation. So some good soft and hard skills from both. It also led me to realize that it wasn't for me as well, right? And that I really wanted to do something myself. So it was kind of from that point.
And I do want to get into that, although I noticed a role on your LinkedIn page, FAT Concepts Group, which invests in early stage startups. The question I have is around blind spots. So there's these commonly known 13 blind spots that can hold back an otherwise healthy business. Things like not properly onboarding people, not creating a culture of accountability, not focusing on lead generation, hiring is a blind spot, failing to tie corporate goals to personal goals. So with that in mind, and focusing on the fact that you invest in early stage startups, is there one or two things you see in today's early stage startups that one or two blind spots you see in today's early stage startups that they often overlook, that if they didn't overlook, would not their growth would be 2, 3, 4, 5x what it is today?
Yeah, for sure. Like, people I would speak to would be super early, so you're probably talking like pre-seed, so like very much like pre-commercialization, if you want to put it that way. Yeah, being able to clearly identify and communicate their value proposition is a difficult one. Why people should buy from them, go to them, why they're so much better, a 10x or an order of magnitude better than what's out there in the market, isn't so clear. And if someone, it's not easy, it seems easy, right? But it's not the easiest thing to put it into 10 words, right, or something like that, to be able to clearly communicate it. Is definitely one, because if you can't do that to an investor, you can't do that to a potential customer either, right? Is one. And then, yeah, I think if you really want to validate the problem you're trying to solve quite early, I think people jump straight into a solution before they get really into the root of a problem. So they think that something is solving a problem that might not be as hair on fire as they think it is, right? Because there's so much competition in all the markets now, and so much competition for attention, whether you're doing a podcast, you're doing a business, you've got a SaaS product, you've got something else. You need to do something that is going to catch people's attention for a reason that we talked about ROI, for something like that, right? They need to get a benefit that's beyond what everyone else is doing. So those two things, I think, for me, for a really early stage, obviously it'd be different as you go up the growth chain, but I wouldn't be dealing with people like that.
Today, you're the CEO and founder of Nori. I hope I pronounced that right. But rather than me attempt the 30 or 60-second commercial, you'll do a better job because you're the CEO. So the mic is yours, Conor.
Yeah, so Nori is the first truly intelligent operating system for restaurants. So what I mean by truly intelligent, what I mean by operating system in a practical sense is we've built a full restaurant management product that helps businesses manage their whole workforce, HR, all the way down through payroll, and then from like a product management, so inventory, ordering, stock management, and accounts payable. And why it's intelligent, it's the whole platform is built on top of our own proprietary artificial intelligence engine. So what that means is we plug into a business, we learn about everything that's going on in the business, and we're then able to say, hey, we know what's going to happen from a demand point of view. We're able to create schedules with you or for you. We're able to create your orders, send them to your vendors. We're able to create prep lists for chefs. We're able to automate with computer vision all of your stock counting. So basically, just making sure that decisions are consistent on a performance point of view and saving people bucket loads of time. So things that would take a bunch of different managers in a restaurant or in multiple restaurants, 20 to 30 hours a week, can be done in minutes. And the decisions on these two areas, which mostly impact businesses' profitability, are always going to be data focused, data centric, and on point, right? So I don't know if you've ever worked in a restaurant setting, it can be like the minute you walk in the front door, it can feel like getting punched in the face, right? Because there's so much stuff going on. There's like issues, there's obviously you're customer facing all the time. There's just a bunch of different things. So we're just trying to create something that can help people just get through the day a lot more cleanly and just perform a lot more consistently.
And to help me with my next question, so the audience understand Mad Egg, what's Mad Egg?
Mad Egg is a free range chicken, a fried chicken concept that we set up in 2018, Dublin. So it's a fast casual restaurant. So the idea is it's like taking farm to fork chicken or fried chicken in a pretty low price point setting. So when we set it up, I think we were one of the first guys to do it. So I think there's a bunch of other fried chicken sandwich chains or restaurants that people would know now. But the idea was, just bring really quality protein or cut of meat, do it in a pretty slick process. So we took like the kind of Nashville style or Tennessee style over in the southern states of the US, around like how they tea brine and for like 36, 48 hours, and then just kind of amalgamated that with some really good local produce. We partnered with a bunch of bakers, a bunch of farmers and things like that, just to try and deliver tasty and a cool product at like a good price point. So everything's sub €10.
I can vouch for it. I've been once or twice, and I'm a big fan. And it's a strange relationship Irish people have with fried chicken for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm going to make an assumption here, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the idea of Nori came into your head from having run and set up Mad Egg. Mad Egg in the hospitality setting that it's in is a complete, 180-degree turn from your role in sales or as a fund manager. Was it an idea in your head that you just wanted to scratch? Like, what got you into that hospitality industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I always had a huge interest in it and worked in it growing up. And it was a space, I think, like when I was working in those other jobs or in fund management and investments, I was looking at my exit avenues, looking at what I could do with my budget, what I could do with my skill set, what I could do quickly because I wanted to leave. It ended up being about a year of kind of idea generation. I landed on that space. So something I come across in terms of a restaurant concept across states, across some other countries, and I thought it was done really well. I thought it was done quite poorly in Ireland. I thought like chicken's obviously most solid protein, huge demand for it, but most of the places in afterthought it's not great. So that was the early foray, and then there was the trouble of I've never opened a restaurant before, so what the hell do I do now, right? So that was most of the time in terms of trying to meet, upskill and learn. So I would have met like 50 to 60 different operators around Dublin City, learn from them what they did well, what they didn't do well. Also try and see if any of them wanted to partner up. Eventually partnered up with my co-founder, Stephen, who had a bunch of other restaurants in the city, and we kind of went after from that point. So we, I think like the idea for me at the time was this is attainable, it's achievable. It's like, when I had some other ideas, like I think it was an early version of like Buy Me, or Gorillas, or these type of guys that Get Here over in London in terms of the quick grocery. This is in 2016, 17, some stuff around like housing platforms and things like that. But it just felt like it wasn't attainable at the time. Number one, for capital, but number two, because I couldn't really build it myself, right? In terms of like the tech side of the product. So this felt like something that was a little bit more tangible, which is why I went that route. And I felt like it was, if done well, it could be a good cash flow generating business to then try and go after something else as well. So,
shout out to Devin Hughes from Buy Me, great guy.
Yeah.
I have founders and CEOs on from a variety of different industries on this podcast, but a topic that comes up usually is around retention, because trying to compete with the big guys is not easy. But I'd like to go back a further step in that kind of sequence. Not retention; it's actually finding the talent, or finding the right people. You wrote a blog on 5 ways, and I'm reading my screen if you see my eyes go to the right, on 5 ways to become the employer of choice. The 5 are: be mission driven, create a clear path for career progression, offer a market leading compensation package, champion your champions, and don't overcomplicate it. In your own words, can you summarize what you mean when you say champion your champions?
I think in any business, if it's a restaurant business or anything, right? So for Nori as well, your people are your greatest asset, right? So you need to champion champions. Like you need to be able to look at the people who are there working with you, because in this market they could work for. If you have got great people, they could work for anyone, anywhere, probably in the world at this stage, particularly remote work, and they're there helping you or helping the business achieve its mission, right? So you need to put them front and center and show them recognition and gratitude, and particularly the people who are there day in, day out. So I think that's what you mean from it.
And I'll leave a link to that blog, your LinkedIn, and both company Nori and Mad Egg's websites below, whether you're listening or watching to this. Growth. You're obviously focusing growth over the next.
Yeah.
Well, I want to focus on the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months. I noticed a recent partnership with Square. So the question is, what are some of the things you're focused on to achieve growth over the next 12 to 18 months? One, the partnership. Is there an element of upselling within current accounts you're involved in, prospecting into net new accounts, expanding into new markets? Just give me a brief overview of how you plan to achieve continued growth.
Yeah, so I think with Nori, over the next 18 months, there's going to be two key geographies that we're after. So our prime market's the UK, and we've got a pretty extensive wait list in there. So we've had a lot of inbound, a lot of traction in terms of people looking at what we're doing, which has been great. So we're working through our list to onboard them continuously. We're obviously trying to keep that list going in terms of growth. So we're looking to grow massively over the next 12 months across the UK, and then we'll be looking to enter into States into Q1, probably 2023, and that's nice. The route that we're looking to take. I think like we've got a product that no one else has. I don't want to go too much into a sales pitchy on this thing, but I think we're doing something very different and something that's really going to benefit thousands and thousands of operators. So there should be big growth in the cards, assuming that we continue to execute the way we know we can.
Awesome. Well, I wish you continued success with that. A question I ask sometimes guests is around one tool they can't live without. I'm guessing your answer is going to be Nori.
It has to be, yeah, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hiring. I noticed both on Mad Egg and Nori, you announced roles over the last number of weeks or months. Developers on the Nori side and a GM. You announced a new hire, an operations director or a manager as well. So the question I have is, there's a well-known article on Harvard Business Review around hiring. The cost of a bad hire is 5 times their annual salary of, missed opportunity, depending on the role. So when it comes to hiring, do you have a specific approach, or are you 100% gut feel?
No, a specific approach, definitely. I think like it's probably difficult in this market. If you look at, it's funny, like as I have a lens into about like what's going on the restaurant and hospitality side, and then what's going on the tech side. And both markets have never been as tight, right? Have never been as competitive to try and get people for different reasons. But I think like your process is so important. So we take a pretty structured approach to it. So if it's going to be a view on how we assess if somebody, say like if we just take Nori's interview process or hiring process, so it'd be like a 3-stage process, for example, always the same. So we'd have a view on everyone on the team is pretty aligned with our mission and our values and what we're trying to do and the type of people that we are, the principles of how we work. And we try to assess that initially from more of a qualitative conversation, right? To see if someone's a good fit, obviously get an understanding of their background, how they've worked. When you're working in a team that's very fast paced and you're building and shipping a lot, we're shipping product every day, something goes out, something new. So it's quite fast paced, just to see if that fit's going to be there from their personality, but how they like to work. And then like there's a bit of an assessment in terms of can they fit into the type of work we're doing. So it's quite a technical assessment if someone's going to do that, right? From our side to them, but then to flip the coin to them, to allow them to assess us, right? They need to go through and question what we're trying to do, our opportunities. So just it's quite structured for us. And then they have a chance to do a round robin with anyone they want in the company to understand if we are who we say we are, if the culture is what we say it is, if the opportunities are what we say it is, just so the fit's right all around. That's become more difficult to try and do in about a 10-day period now because everyone's got a million offers, right? So it's tough to stay as process driven as that, but I think it's important because, as you just said, if you're just taking on people that aren't the right fit, it's not good for anyone. It's not good for the prospective candidate, and it's not good for the company.
Agreed. 2 final questions for you, Conor. Is there a skill that you can identify that you weren't so great at in your early days? You can go back as far as your tech sales role, but you knew was crucial to improve on if you were going to succeed as a leader.
Communication would be one, right? And being able to clearly communicate and not being nervous to communicate. Sometimes the difficult conversations are avoided because they're difficult, right? And nobody likes to have an awkward conversation, right? I think something like that I've got a bit better at, just to be a bit more transparent on that side. And probably persistence, right? I think there's a lot of things I look back on my previous roles that I gave up quite easily and things, or didn't do as well as I could have. Which I don't think, you just don't have an option to do that when you're in a CEO role.
Final question for you. If you were the decision maker to add a mandatory subject to the secondary school curriculum, what would it be and why?
Personal finance management, 100%. I've said this a bunch of times. So just think like, it's all well and good to know corporate accounting and management accounting and things like that. But you need to be able to run a personal balance sheet, a personal profit and loss, and understand where you can put your money when you're in college. If you're earning a part-time job, you should be, if you're setting up pensions, if you're setting up in passive investment funds, just to show people the benefit of 5-10% of their income every year over 30-40 years will make them a millionaire, right? And then everybody's retiring a lot happier and a lot safer, right? So definitely that.
Interesting. Conor, it's been a pleasure spending the last 30 minutes with you, getting to know you. I'll leave links to the article we referenced earlier on, both company websites and your LinkedIn page if anyone wants to connect with you. But for today, thanks for being my guest, and I wish you continued success and hope you break North America.
Likewise, dude. Keep going with the podcast. Great stuff.